I'd like to welcome you to the state of Missouri. Here we have the state seal of Missouri, which I'm going to describe to you. It's rich in history, and Missouri is well with rich history as well as the state flag. The Great Seal was designed by Judge Robert William Wells, and it was adopted in the Missouri General Assembly in January 11, 1822. The center of the seal, which is here, is comprised of two parts. On the right is the United States coat of arms containing the bald eagle, and in its claws are arrows and olive branches signifying the power of war and peace that lies in the federal government. On the left side of the shield, the state side, are a grizzly bear and a silver crescent moon. And the crescent symbolizes Missouri at the time of the state seal creation, a state of small population and wealth, which would increase like the new on or crescent moon. The population and wealth and the second sun, meaning Missouri, was second state formed out of the Louisiana Territory and the Louisiana Purchase. The shield is encircled by a belt, inscribed with the motto, "United we stand, divided we fall," which is here with the belt. And Missouri's advantage as a member of the United States. The two grizzly bears on either side of the shield symbolize the state's strength and its citizens' bravery. The bears stand atop of the scroll bearing the state motto, "Let the welfare of the people be the supreme law." And below this scroll are the Roman numerals for 1820, which was the year that Missouri began its functions as a state. And the helmet on top of the shield represents the state sovereignty, and the large star on top of the helmet, surrounded by 23 smaller stars, signifies Missouri's status as the 24th state of the United States. The cloud around the large star indicates the promise Missouri had becoming a state, which I'll explain later. The whole state seal is enclosed by the scroll, being the words, "The Great State of Missouri." And the state flag is basically the same state seal with colors of white and blue. The state flower of Missouri is the hawthorn, which is on the far left. The state bird is the bluebird. The state animal, which is kind of strange, is a mule. And the most interesting thing is the Gateway Arch, which is the second largest man-made monument in the United States. Overview, I'll go over state history with Missouri, famous Missourians, which there are many, some state facts, and finally the economy. The Missouri Territory was ceded to Spain by the French in 1763 and was returned in 1800. Around this time, that Missouri Territory, where Missouri is located, was thrown back and forth between basically Spain, French, and American colonies. The U.S. acquired Missouri as part of the Louisiana Purchase in 1803 and was the second state a part of that purchase. The influence of white settlers at the time drove Native American tribes to Kansas and Oklahoma territories, and they were basically gone by 1863. There were basically 4 tribes that lived in the area, primarily the Sioux and a few others. Fur trades and the Santa Fe Trail provided prosperity for settlers, and at that time the Lewis and Clark expedition was continuing, and St. Louis became the gateway for pioneers heading west, which is obviously why we have the St. Louis Arch. Missouri entered the Union as a slavery state on August 10, 1824, and became the 24th state of the United States, as I mentioned. It remained with the Union until the end of the war, and one interesting fact I'd like to point out is Missouri was both pro and anti-slavery at the time, but they still remained with the Union until the end of the Civil War. Some famous Missourians. Jesse James and the Pony Express is probably the most interesting. This is how the mail system got started in the United States. Here's a picture on the left-hand side of Jesse James, and And on the right, if you go to the exhibit they have in St. Louis, they have a arch there and a monument where the Pony Express was located and where it finally got started. Also, Jesse James was shot in 1882, which is kind of interesting, by one of his prisoners, Robert Ford. And the Pony Express was actually started on April 30, 1860 in Missouri. Next is Samuel Longhorn Clemens, or otherwise known as Mark Twain, who lived in Florida, Missouri. He's most famous for publishing Huckleberry Finn, which was published in 1884. And the most important is Harry S. Truman, who was the 33rd President of the United States. And one of his big things that he did was brought the war against Japan to an end in August 1945 by dropping 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, therefore ending the war in Japan. Some state facts. Population is a little more than 5.5, or a little less than 5.5 million. It's ranked 17th in the nation as far as population, and has a density of a little less than 80 people per square mile. Some racial distribution, if you're interested. 87% of the population is white, 11% is black. 1.1% is Native American, which points out that how badly the American tribes were driven out of Missouri during the Civil War. And a little less than 0.5% are Asian and Pacific Islanders. Total land area of Missouri is 68,800 square miles, mostly of which are hills or rolling small mountains. It's ranked 18th overall as the largest state in the United States. Some chief economy industries, if you're moving to the state, they go in order according to the most important are agriculture, manufacturing, aerospace, and tourism. So if you're moving to the state of Missouri, you would want to be in the agriculture industry primarily if you were doing crops and so on. Manufacturing, they do a lot of transportation, specifically aircraft, some other things like they have several industries manufacturing other transportation items like buses, cars, so on and so forth. Aerospace, they design a lot of the parts for NASA out there, believe it or not. And also tourism is a big attraction in Missouri. Some manufactured goods, if you're moving out there and you have a job in this kind of economy. Transportation is also a big issue in Missouri. Food and other related products, again, are crops. Electrical and electrical equipment is a big issue in Missouri. And Dow Chemicals is located out there, I believe. And they have a big industry out there as far as crops and so on and so forth. Any questions?
Do you know why it's called the Show Me State?
Not exactly. I'm not sure. I think it has something to do with when the state was purchased. Something to do with them being, the people of Missouri being outgoing, but I'm not exactly sure. I can get back to you on that.
You said the arch was the second largest monument. I'll study which one I want the first one was.
It's the Statue of Liberty.
Oh.